Later I found out what taxing, difficult work it is to be an animator, and found that really my forte was not animation, but more comic stripping. So I'm a comic stripper.
From Channel 4's San Diego, the people you know as you've never known them. This is Forefront.
If you have children, it's fun to watch them stage by stage to see how they evolve every step of the way. But for you, Greg Evans, you have had a baby, Luann, who has been in her teens for now going on 30 years.
Yes.
Greg Evans, you are a wonderful cartoonist. You have the comic strip Luann. What's that like to know that she hasn't aged too much in all those years?
It's been a very fast 30 years, believe me. Yes, and Luann started out at age 13 and then turned 16 at some point and then 18, but it's taken her 30 years to grow, to age just a few years. I need to bottle that and I'd be a zillionaire.
Well, lots has happened in the last 10 years since we first interviewed you, so we're going to revisit that interview now and then catch up with you and your daughter after that. So here we go. Greg Evans is at home in his San Marcos studio and in his own world at his drawing table. His comic strip celebrates 20 years in print in 2005, but Luann has been a lifetime in the making. Greg grew up in Burbank, just outside the Disney studios. His dream started in the 1950s, where young dreams often do, at the movies. Along with the rest of the country, he was captivated by Disney animation. While his older brother was the athlete of the family, Greg spent his time drawing and daydreaming about being an animator. He drew cartoons and when he was 15, created his first comic strip. Greg didn't think he had the artistic talent or patience to be an animator, but he had a flair for the funnies. Greg went to UC Northridge where he studied art. In 1970, he graduated and married Betty shortly after. The newlyweds, both teachers, followed their careers to El Centro, then Australia. When Greg and Betty were ready to start a family, they moved to Colorado Springs. All the while, Greg drew cartoons. Though his ideas were promising, he wasn't getting published. So he found work at a TV station and worked his way up to promotions manager. The job came with its quirks. The station mascot was a robot, a crazy gimmick, but worth its weight in gold. Greg and Betty wanted to be closer to family, so they moved their 2 small children to San Diego. Greg bought a robot and started a business, renting Maxwell out for parties. A growing family, a decent living, and in 1985, a big break. Greg's comic strip made it to the papers. Luann was an instant hit, especially with teenagers. The strip showcased the lovable yet tortured teen caught in the comedy of adolescence. As he watched his own daughter grow up, Evans applied Luann's light humor to heavier issues. From drugs to alcohol to those tough-to-talk-about topics, Evans' comic strip became an icebreaker. He was drawing teens' attention to bigger subjects, even drawing a special strip for local blood drives. In 2004, Greg was named the National Cartoonist of the Year with a Reuben Award given by his peers. Today, you can find Luann in the paper or in books, or even on the stage. It's been adapted to a high school musical. Luann has gone farther than Greg ever dreamed. After 20 years, Luann is still a teenager. Who knows if she'll ever grow up? But as Greg Evans has shown, life is most exciting when we don't know what's ahead. Let's go back a few years to when you were a kid and you grew up in Burbank.
Yeah, I lived maybe 6 blocks from the Disney studios, and I remember when I was a little kid, I'd hop on my bike, ride over to the gates, and just sort of sit there and hope that Walt would come out and hire me, or something. But I love the Disney characters, and my earliest memories are sitting in my bedroom alone, drawing Mickey and Donald and all those great Disney characters. I wanted to be an animator. I thought I wanted to work at Disney Studios. Later I found out what taxing, difficult work it is to be an animator, and found that really my forte was not animation, but more comic stripping. So I'm a comic stripper.
But even, lots of kids, they look at those characters and they go and they might draw and have fun. But what made you good at that? And did you see that you actually had some talent, or did someone tell you that you had a gift or a talent to do that?
There's no family history of artistic ability. I don't know, I guess I was just, like I say, my earliest memories are of drawing and drawing cartoons in particular, not anything else, but drawing cartoons. So I was just born with this rare cartooning disease that seems to afflict males more than females. I always loved to draw cartoons.
When you were in high school then, what did you see yourself doing? At the time you thought maybe the animation part, right?
Yeah, some kind of a career
Yeah.
in cartooning. But it's difficult. You have some talent, but you have a lot of drive and passion for this thing. But how do you get into this business? I had no idea. It's not like you go to college and get your degree in cartooning and then
Right.
you go apply for a job. It doesn't work that way. And especially later when I really thought I wanted to do a comic strip, it's just a matter of having the right idea at the right time and being lucky.
Well, you went to Cal State Northridge, and while you were pursuing your education, you still were pursuing your dream. Weren't you trying to send out some of your ideas to hopefully to syndicates that they would pick you up?
Yes,
But
yes,
you got
I was.
rejected a few
Many
times.
times, many times. It was probably during college that I started developing comic strip ideas, and probably submitted a dozen or so over the years, off and on. And again, lots of rejection.
And I think that probably is one of the hardest things for some people to understand, that you have to get rejected many times before you finally have success. So you
Well, I
dealt with
did.
that okay?
Well,
Most people
it's hard.
probably.
I mean, this is really what I wanted to do, and especially when the teaching wasn't going well for me, I wasn't really enjoying being a teacher, and I really wanted this other career to happen for me. So I'd pour my heart and soul into some new idea for a strip and send it off with the highest of hopes, thinking it was my best work ever, and then it would get rejected, and it's devastating. It's really hard. But then you regroup and eventually you look back at the stuff you sent and you can see why it was rejected. It's awful. It's awful stuff. So you have to reach a certain level, I guess, of maturity before everything is clicking right and you get the right idea at the right time.
So by this point, you're almost 35.
Yes.
And you have your two kids, Gary and Karen, and you have this idea, yet another idea for a comic strip that your daughter inspired that?
She did. She was at that pre-teen stage that girls go through where they dress up in mom's clothes and makeup and high heels and jewelry, and they walk around the house like they're hot stuff. And I was watching her and I thought, boy, now there's a comic strip. And originally I was Luann was like a 6 or 7 year old little, kind of a saucy little girl. And then I realized that was a little limiting, so I aged the character to 13 because that's when the fun really happens. And that's really how Luann was born.
So how does she get discovered, and how really then were you an overnight success practically? Who finally saw that?
An
and
overnight
said,
success after 35 years.
Right.
3 different syndicates thought enough of Luann, of the first samplings, to ask for a second sample. And so I knew I was onto something at this point. Although I was so discouraged and so frustrated that I had sworn this would be my last attempt.
Really?
Yeah. I thought, I'm 35, I should be looking for real work by now. And I thought, if this one doesn't go, I'm done. I'm not going to keep chasing this dream. And I had actually sort of packed up all my drawing materials and stuck them up on a shelf, and this was it.
Wow.
But I think I knew that,
Yeah.
that this
So
was going to be the one.
how did you come up with the name Luann? Where did that come from?
You know, I drew samples of this character, and because when you're designing a comic strip, the look of the character is so important. You want something that you can draw over and over again, for one thing, and from different angles and so forth. The first time I finally drew her how I liked her, I just looked at her, and the name Luann just popped into my head.
So what was it like for you the first time to open up a newspaper and see your comic strip in print?
Yeah, to open up the LA Times and see my color work in on their comic page. It was a thrill. It was unbelievable. In fact, it was on the page right behind Peanuts. And Schultz and Peanuts have always been a hero to me. So here I was, glued to his backside.
Wow. And you had to, I mean, you were in the early stages. Was it difficult to really come up with those storylines because you have to plan so far in advance? Or was it just sort of just pouring out of you because you were so excited to finally be actually, in this position to do this?
Well, I think that's part of why I knew this strip was going to make it and was the right one at the right time, because my previous ideas were all kind of contrived. I was looking at, let's see, what's not on the comic page and let me fill that space kind of idea. And so I was trying to I did a strip about cops and circus clowns. I know nothing about cops and circus clowns. But I know something about family, and I knew something about having a teenager, and so the writing just flowed. The first step, of course, the most important step, is the writing of the strip and the writing of the idea, and I have to come up with 365 new ideas every year. I just do a little written script. 1, 2, 3 represents 3 panels. Then the next step is to do a little pencil sketch, just a little rough thumbnail sketch to show where the characters are, lay out the text, and set up the imagery and determine sizes of boxes and so forth. Okay, so now I've basically got the lettering spaced out in the strip, and now it's ready to simply print out onto a piece of paper that I then will draw on. So now I'm going to lay out the characters here, and I just use real simple shapes, and so it's just a kind of a quick layout to sort of place everybody, make sure I'm fitting them in properly, and I'm kind of using this as my guideline. And this is the creative part of the drawing, because you're really nailing the expressions, the body language, the gestures. Now this is Brad's car I'm putting over here, and things like cars are always hard to draw for me, and I have this file folder here, where I have all these different, I have cars, and I have scenes at the dinner table, and miscellaneous around the house, because if you draw something once, why draw it all over again from scratch? And then the inking process is also a creative thing, because now you're putting in a lot of the details of the characters, but it's also the frustrating part, because well, you're inking. This is the final thing, and you seldom get it right the first time around. It really is kind of hard work. I mean, I'll sit here and I'll draw, and pretty soon I find I'm making the expressions of the characters, and I'm tensing up if it's a, and after a few hours of this, I'm exhausted. I mean, you think sitting here drawing cartoons would be a fun, easy thing to do, but it can be difficult. Now I've scanned the drawing into the computer, and I use my tablet here, and I can highlight areas and fill them with different shades just to give it a little more definition, a little more interest. And this is how the strip looks when it's all finished. And then the worst part of it is, you get a whole week's worth of work done, you send it off, and then you start all over again.
Greg, I love how you describe yourself as a comic stripper. Are you still a comic stripper? Good for you. Well, let's introduce your daughter, Karen Evans, who you were the inspiration for your dad's comic strip. Let's go back to those early years. What was it like to know that you were his inspiration?
I guess thankfully Luann started out at 13 instead of exactly my same age, so it was more like growing up with someone rather than somebody that represented me directly. I definitely was not that mature at age 5 to behave like a 13-year-old, but I love dressing up, and I don't know, I must have been a really fun kid.
Yeah, she was interesting, but not interesting enough.
Right.
So I had to invent this 13-year-old version of my daughter in a way, and I guess I just made stuff up because I was never a 13-year-old girl,
Right.
I'm pretty sure. So it was, yeah, it was just a matter of making things up until she then became 13. Then the floodgates
material.
opened and it was there, yeah.
Yeah. And in many ways, I think Luann's a little more dramatic than I was. I mean, I certainly had, like any teenager, my drama, and we both had very messy rooms, and we didn't really know what we wanted to be when we grew up. Maybe that's still a little bit true. But in many ways, she was a little more reactive than I was. So I suppose those who knew me growing up could see a difference between the character and the Karen.
Well, you posed the question, you know, what you wanted to be when you grew up.
Right.
So what did you want to be? You pursued your education?
Right. Growing up, I was often told two things, that I would either grow up, I should be a writer, because I did write lots of stories. I was very creative. If I look back through my materials, my writings when I was a student in school, my writing is very strong, even at a young age, or that I'd maybe be a teacher. And I was determined not to become a teacher because that just seemed really too obvious. I was going to do something extraordinary instead. But I'm an extraordinary educator, so I did end up becoming a teacher, and I loved that career path. But I think there was another side of me kind of simmering, this creative side. And it was actually 2011. We were in the car on our way to a birthday party, and we were talking about the strip and how it's this amazing legacy and what will happen someday when he's no longer able, or I don't think he'll ever not be interested, to carry on the strip. And what do you do with this whole universe of people? I mean, they're very real characters to us, real individuals that have these great lives. And I, growing up, never thought of myself as much of an artist. And that's really the side of creating a comic strip you see. So you see your dad sits down and he draws. What you don't see is the writing, which is incredibly hard to do. But we had this conversation, and then this light bulb kind of flared in this car ride of, but oh my gosh, maybe you could write the strip, and you know, we can find someone to draw it. That's not unusual in the cartooning world. And that was really the birth of this new career path. I left teaching just this last June in 2014, and what started as a little bit of a weekend project has become a full-time collaboration.
So you've started this partnership for a couple of years now where you also, so you're doing some of the storylines, but you work together on this.
Correct.
How is that now?
It's great because, you know, cartooning is such a solitary profession, and I kind of yearned for that collaborative process all along. I always have. And especially when, I mean, I'm an old man doing a strip about a teenage girl. You know, what the heck? And as Luann aged into young womanhood, it was such an obvious light bulb moment that she could come on board, and it has been great because she provides insights and that layered, nuanced, emotional input that females tend to do so much better than males do. I'm all about the jokes.
Yeah.
This is true.
But she's under the hood figuring things out. So it's really been good. I really enjoy it. Plus, it's just fun.
It is fun.
We get together, we laugh, and it's fun.
Yeah.
It's really fun.
But you're not just helping the creative, you're also helping take this out to, you know, social media world. I mean, Facebook, your website. Tell us how that involvement has helped, you know, embrace your fan base even more and maybe perhaps have it grow. Talk to us about that.
So as you touched on a little bit, cartooning is a kind of isolated field. And before things got digital, it was a newspaper business, and you'd write your joke and it would go out, and you don't really know if people read it or laughed or liked it. You'd get maybe some letters every now and again. Once the strip started showing up online, we were very fortunate. The readers of Luann are incredibly dedicated and very passionate fans. And I think because it is a story-driven strip and there's such a range of characters to connect with, our fans latched on online, and we have a really thriving commenting community. And seeing that has been both fun and a little bit intimidating because you get feedback and hear ideas. And we don't spend too much time reading every last word, but it is fun to hear when people are really inspired.
I went on, searching around, and I love that you've started talking about your 30th anniversary. In 2015
Right.
is the 30th, and posted a picture of you in a lovely
Yes.
shower cap and
Thank
bikini
you.
when you were 5 or 6 years
So
old.
fashionable.
So I think that's fun for people to see the real people behind the creative process.
Yeah, the picture of me in the shower cap didn't
Might not
cut.
have done so
We
well.
cut that one out.
And so for your 30th, you're actually asking your fans
Yes.
to sort of guess what Luann would look like at 40-something years old. You're getting feedback?
Well, they're saying a lot, as they always do, and we're going to take the winning suggestions and incorporate them into a special drawing.
So you're going to create
I'm going to
her-
draw a special, a special sketch that will show Luann at age 43 with whoever her husband is, whatever home she's living in, what her career is, her children, her pets. Should be interesting.
And that will be taken from
That
all
will
of
be
these
taken
suggestions.
from these suggestions, yes.
We've been tabulating, and we've got everything from very logical, this is why, explanations to, I think she'll do something different. She'll travel in a Winnebago. She'll have a pet bobcat. Very creative responses.
What a great
So
idea.
it's been fun to hear from our fans, and I think they've enjoyed envisioning if Luann had aged at real time, she'd be 43, what might that look like?
When you look at sort of your future, and not just the characters, what do you see down the road for yourself?
I'll be fading away.
I didn't mean it that way.
Oh.
I mean, in terms of, carrying on the stories, and you think you're going to do this for a while?
I think so.
Good.
I'm well. No, this is fun. I've never had more fun. The strip has never been boring or a task or drudgery to me. Every day is fresh and new, and having my daughter come on board has just infused it with a whole new level of fun and excitement. So, yeah, I don't see any ending in sight. I know that someday I'll have to set the pen down and hand it over to somebody. And there was I never thought that the strip would continue after I retired because nobody in the family really seemed interested. But now it seems like it could go forever for a whole new generation of fans.
Do you have any ideas that you're just can't wait to include in the comic strip?
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, should I tell you? Honestly, we have more ideas than we can fit, and this has been one of the things I've discovered. When you grow up and it just seems like the job your dad does and he makes it look easy, and then you start being involved and you realize it's very challenging. We have such a big cast of characters and interesting storylines going, but you have to boil that down into just a few boxes a day and tuck in something hilarious and keep that going 365 days.
Well, I think it's great to see this new partnership, and not every father-daughter has that great relationship, but how fun that you get to start a whole new chapter together, literally a whole new chapter. So congratulations.
Thank you.
And thank you
thank
for
you.
joining us. Any last word in your comic stripper motif.
Keep up the good work.
Oh, thanks, you too.
Okay.